For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is Dr. Harrell Rhome. Hello, Harold. How are you, sir?
Oh, good morning to you, Clay. Everything is well and good down here on the Gulf Coast of Texas. And I hope all is well with you. I wish all were well in our land, but as you know, it's not.
It is not. And, today is, this week, I've had a lot of my guests on talking about various religions, various races, and, some of them have pointed out that we've really forgotten who we are, where we came from, haven't we?
Well, it seems like we have. We've forgotten that we're really the only race in the world that has been a creative race. I know that sounds terrible to some people to even say that. But when you look at way back in history, the so-called white people, I call them the Indo-European people, have been the creators of culture in most of the world.
And we're talking about Caucasian people. Why are we called Caucasian? Because we crossed the Caucasus Mountains. So where did we come from if we crossed the Caucasus Mountains, Harold?
Well, I don't know that I want to get into that one because I am not one of these Christian identity types, but I respect that belief, and I know that people have. I no longer practice the Christian religion. I've given up what I call the three Semitic religions. I'm not a Muslim. I'm certainly not Jewish, and any longer I have a hard time claiming what is the Christian religion today. So I look back in the very, very dark past to India, and I practice the ancient Indian form of religion.
That predates Christianity, certainly.
It predates it by thousands of years.
Harold, I make this statement on my show on a regular basis. The Constitution, I took an oath to defend the Constitution. I think that this country was founded by patriots that stood up to the New World Order of their day. The sun never sets on the English Empire. And they tried to create, for the first time in 6,000 years, a government of the people, for the people, by the people. It's been under attack for 300 for as long as 1776. It's been under attack, hasn't it?
Well, somebody has said, I forget who said it, but that most democracies, most republics, don't last but about 200 years, and if that is true, we're certainly on the mark on that one. What was founded as a constitutional republic, and the word democracy was not really used by the founders of our country. But what has become the constitutional republic, it's become something that's been misguided and misdirected for years and years and years now. And we essentially have a federal dictatorship that I trace to beginning with Abraham Lincoln. He's quite a beloved historical figure in the minds of some, but when you look at what he really did, he suspended habeas corpus, he suspended all kind of parts of the Constitution, and he essentially became the first federal dictator through the Civil War. But a lot of people don't like to hear that because they think Lincoln is a great president. He's one of the strangest presidents we ever had, and some say he was assassinated, among other reasons, because he looked at Liberia was a good idea, that maybe the black people who had been forcibly brought over here to the United States, maybe they should go back to Africa and settle there. And some say that's one of the reasons that they offed Lincoln. But it's hard to say after all this time, but Yes, Abraham Lincoln was the first federal dictator, and it's gotten only worse ever since, and certainly the Roosevelt administration with World War II brought on even more dictatorial policy. And I think most of our listeners tuned in probably have some familiarity with what we're talking about.
There's a process called gradualism, Harrell, and that seems to be what they one of the tactics they're using on us. The other one is the oldest one in Sun Tzu's warfare, and that's divide and conquer. So, you know, we got Republicans and we got Democrats and we got Christians and we got Muslims and we got Jews out there, and they're setting us up for a war with each other. And that was a Mason. Well, let's throw another little conspiracy in the mix. How about the Masons Albert Pike predicted that he predicted the first two world wars, and the second and the third world war would be fought with Muslims. Just like we're right on track here, right on a plan here.
Yes, we created a whole world war with Islam, but I am not a great fan of the Islamic religion. I have another book that I haven't published yet that I've written about that. But Islam does not necessarily have to be our enemy. We have attacked Islamic countries. We're doing that right now. Iraq, Iran, and Iran, they look like that's going to be next. Yet another war for Jewish Zionist Israel, it looks to me like.
Now let me ask you this. You know, I feel the same way you is about the whole religious thing. I don't go to churches. I don't hang out in churches. I think we're all given a direct link with God. The churches call it a soul. And
oh yes, yes.
You know, but I try to learn from history and figure out where we're going here. The Jews for 3,000 years, or possibly more, because they're not necessarily Jews. The word didn't even exist when they were supposedly around there. And we know from their own statements that this Khazar was the birthplace and the tribe that adopted, the country that adopted that religion. But they've been behind every war this century. And the Bible predicted an Armageddon. I think it's possible that we've been in Armageddon for the last 100 years. We've killed almost 1 billion people, have been murdered by their own governments or in wars or by famines or starvations this century.
Yes, and given we look back on World War I and World War II, that was really a war against white people. The white people of Europe were attacked by us, and we were set on that track by the Jews. They had to destroy Germany, for one thing. They couldn't let Germany become the dominant country of Europe. That's what World War I was about. Really, World War I and World War II, you can look at them as all one conflict. That they had to get rid of Germany. They could not tolerate for Germany to be an independent, economically free country, which it became on its own, a lot of ways by giving up its currency.
Now, this war on white people, you know, this has been real evident to me. I mean, I've been accused of being a racist. I've been accused of being anti-government. I've been accused of being anti-Semitic. And but if I wanted to join the Aryan nations, why would I be any more of a racist than a black man who joins the NAACP or a Jew that joins the A.D.L.?
Well, it's essentially the same thing. It's acceptable to be a racist, racialist, however you want to call it, if you're not white. But if you're white and you even mention the word race, much less the word Jew or Zionist or anything like that, like you say, you're accused of being a racist, you're accused of being an anti-Semite, all kind of terrible things. No one should pay any attention to you because you are a racist and an anti-Semite. You've certainly been labeled that way. I have too, and so have others that speak out on any matter about race. And yes, the so-called National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. That's NAACP, what it's called. What does that mean? What kind of advancement do they want to have? Does that mean that they are going to be the supreme ones, or what? And it's hard to tell what the so-called NAACP really represents anymore. And they certainly don't talk about changing their name. And when you look at what the Zionists have done in Israel, they've created essentially a racist state there. You cannot go there and immigrate there and become a citizen of Israel without converting to the Orthodox form of the Jewish religion, even if you're come from the United States and you are a member of the Reformed branch or something like that. You have to convert to do it. And of course, the Jews, definitely today's Jews, Zionists, don't believe in intermarrying outside of their religion, though they are doing that, and a lot of they're losing many Jews because they are intermarrying. But basically, Israel is a racist, ethnocentric state. It is a state created for the Zionist Jews by the Rothschilds, and that's what it's become. And we have been in bondage to the nation of Israel since it began, and we still are. And now we have all this mess with Iran. As someone pointed out, I think Ron Paul among others, that we lived all through the so-called Cold War era with the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union had literally thousands of nuclear weapons. We seem to have made it through all that. Yet we seem now to be worried about Iran, that they might even have one. Yet we've got Pakistan, another Muslim country, and they are fully nuclear armed, and that's the one we should be worrying about. But we don't think, we seem to be all focused on Iran and that we have to attack Iran. And I'm so disappointed that almost all the Republican candidates, with the exception of Dr. Ron Paul, are warmongers. They want to attack Iran. They want to they're elected to office, particularly Newt Gingrich and Mitt Romney and all those types. They're going probably to start a war with Iran. I think this is a very terrible thing. It'll be very bad for our country. And also, many Jews in Israel today are not for it because they see what it would bring down on their heads. Iran is not some little, excuse my language, pissant third world country. They have a modern military, and they are able to defend themselves in their area. If you don't think that, do a little reading on the internet, you'll see that I am correct about this. But yes, we seem to be lockstep to go to war with Iran, and I think that would be a very, very bad thing if that were to happen.
Well, these wars are not fought for our benefit, and none of them this century. They've been about sending our cream of our crop overseas, where then they either spray us with Agent Orange or give us depleted uranium because they don't want healthy, combat-hardened troops coming back that are still loyal to the Constitution.
That's the thing, yes, to look at, that not only have we irradiated Iraq through using depleted uranium ammunition, we have irradiated our own troops that are there, and people dispute about it, but a lot of people believe, and I think so, that a lot of misborn children are being produced because of the troops. When they're in Iraq, they were exposed to all kinds of depleted uranium, and same thing in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is just a horrible situation. We had no business being there in the beginning. We have not really accomplished anything there, and we have killed lots and lots and lots of innocent people.
Actually, don't mean to interrupt you, but we have accomplished something in there. With those nasty old Taliban, Harrell, we're destroying the opium poppy plants. Now we've got our troops protecting them.
They were the only Afghan government in history that ever tried to suppress the opium trade. And as you know, people our age were in the Vietnam War, and we know that a lot of the Vietnam situation had to do with CIA smuggling drugs back to the United States. And used to, back in those days, you would hear about, oh, all the poppies, all the opium, all the heroin comes from the so-called Golden Triangle area over there in Southeast Asia. Now you don't hear any more about that at all, and all the focus is on Afghanistan. That must be the most profitable place to do it. But yes, all of that, the Taliban, whoever they really were the only Afghan regime that ever tried to suppress the opium trade. And we see what happened to them, and we've been over there 10 years in Afghanistan, and what have we really accomplished other than trying to make a dictatorial state? Nobody likes Hamid Karzai. He's not a very capable leader. And what will really happen if we actually do get out, and we talk about getting out, withdrawing all our troops from Iraq, and that's really not the case at all. We still have some there, and we have simply replaced our troops with Blackwater, and they don't call themselves that, they have a different name now, I believe, but all kinds of mercenary private military companies, and we're still there, and we'll continue to be there. And it looks like what's going on is that we have a Shiite Muslim government now in Iraq, and they already are at war with the other Muslims, the Sunni Muslims, and the Kurds in the north. A lot of people have said that what will probably happen in Iraq is what happened with Yugoslavia. As long as you had a authoritarian dictator, Marshal Tito in Yugoslavia, everything stayed reasonably calm, and the various ethnic groupings were forced to get along with one another. But after he passed away, we know that Yugoslavia broke up, and I forget how many, 5 or 6, became 5 or 6 different little countries. And probably similar thing is going to happen in Iraq.
We call that balkanization, don't we?
Yeah, balkanization, yes, sir. Thank you for saying that.
And
yes.
let me ask you this, Harrell. I see the same thing happening here. We got the Tea Party sniping at the Occupy movements. The Occupy movements are taking craps on police cars, and you've got and somewhere in there. I remember the Tea Party's getting upset because some anti-war movement was putting on a demonstration the same day they were, and the press wasn't covering the Tea Parties properly. I mean, what are they divided with the illegal aliens that have been forced up by this country? They instituted NAFTA that allowed Monsanto to go into Mexico, Archer Daniels Midland into Mexico. Corporate farms, ninth plank on the Communist Manifesto, and they drove all these illegal aliens up because they needed to come up here and work.
Yes, I so much don't blame the Mexican people for wanting to come and have a job. I would want to do the same thing, but yes, they've been drawn up here, and it's purposeful to do that to delete the ruling class of this country, which used to be white people. Unfortunately, it's not so much anymore. But yes, we've drawn illegal aliens up here purposefully to delete this country. And you have the so-called Aslan movement, which is, they believe that this is their country, and you look back in history, they don't have a bad case for that in some ways, that the so-called Mexican-American War in 1846 was essentially an imperialistic war where we attacked Mexico, and it was one of those wars that really didn't have to do that. But we did, and we've been saying a bill for that ever since, and we seize what is now the American Southwest. And
speaking of paying the bills, it's the information I have is that we are supplying foreign aid to 150 countries around the world, including Red China and Israel, and there's only 192 countries in the country. That means, to me, that means that we are actually financing, we're giving money to these countries if they're in the whole international banking conglomerate here.
Oh, that's right. Yes, very much so. Yes, we are supporting numerous countries, and I believe we have military installations in 130-something countries. Why are we doing that? Why do our troops need to be there? What exactly who are they protecting, and what are we preventing? When you look at what it is, a lot of it is to support the Rothschild Zionists and what they're doing to essentially rule the whole world.
Now, I've got a question here for you. I've got a couple of questions. They kind of relate. You know, we fought the communists in this Cold War for years. Who won?
Well, look, the communists basically, as you know and I know, but I mean, we'll want to talk about this because not everyone does know it. World War II ended, and we ended up turning the entire whole section of Eastern Europe. We turned it over to the darn communists.
Well, what was it? Uncle Joe Stalin was a good friends with Roosevelt and Churchill, weren't they?
Oh, we were told that so-called Uncle Joe was a great guy, and they were helping us fight the horrible Germans. We have to get rid of the Germans. So yes, and we ended up turning Eastern Europe for over 70 years, put them in the hands of a horrible communist Bolshevik dictatorship. Uncounted millions of people were killed in that, and also it led to communist China, and again, depending on whose figures you look at, 30 to 40 million people died under Mao Zedong and when the communist regime was established in China. So we did all of that, and we are responsible. American people are responsible for that. We paid the price to be in the war. We supported the war, and most Americans today don't have any idea of what we're talking about. Or they say that World War II was a good thing. And I don't mean to offend anyone. I've certainly got people listening that are so-called the Great Generation, that the ones that went over to Europe and fought against the Germans for us. But when you look at the results of that war, it's a horrible thing and still plaguing us today.
Didn't Patton suggest that we fought on the wrong side?
He certainly did. Yes, he directly suggested that, and again, that's probably one of the things that led to his death, supposedly by car accident. But when you look at the, again, get on the internet, Google these things if you're curious, and you'll find that Patton was probably assassinated. If he wasn't assassinated, he damn sure died at a very convenient time, because he would have said more, he would have had a lot more to say, he might have even run for public office, and they couldn't have that. They had to get rid of him.
They've gotten rid of Kennedy, they've gotten rid of you know, and they destroyed Joe McCarthy. I mean, come on, they made McCarthyism into a bad word. And he was fighting...
Well, yes, McCarthyism has become a bad word, and I was never a big fan of John Kennedy or Robert Kennedy, but obviously those two fellows knew a lot of things that some people were worried that they would eventually start talking about. So they not only got rid of JFK, but they had to get rid of his brother, and again, that's yet another assassination that has all kind of strange things around the outside of it. Again, you can find all these things and read more about it if you want. But yes, apparently, and I'm very worried that if Dr. Ron Paul even comes near being nominated, which I don't think he will, unfortunately, but they may try to do away with him. He's the only one of the Republicans that's worth a damn to be president. The rest of them, like I say, are essentially warmongers. And it's the Republican Party has been taken over by globalist, one world, new world order interests. And that's about all you can say about it now. When you look at all these primaries going on and all that, I hope that somebody will come up and be a different style of candidate for the Republican Party. But right now, it does not look promising at all, except unless you're a globalist, and that they will be in representing what the globalists want, which is to basically take over this country, make it into a dictatorship, and tax people beyond any belief.
That's what they've been doing to us for 100 years.
They certainly have. They certainly have.
Now, do you see? I have. I mean, the whole communist plan. Anytime they take over a country, they go after three classes of people in order. Correct me if I'm wrong. They go after the farmers first, so they don't want you being able to feed yourself. They want. They go after the intelligentsia next. Anybody smart enough to know what they're trying to do. And third, they go after the veterans and law enforcement that are loyal to the old regime. We're in that stage right now, and this has happened in Russia. They killed over 60 million people in Russia, 10 million in the Ukraine, starved them to death in the Ukraine, and I am very, very concerned that that is happening here. But you can't talk about it, you can't point out about it, because it's becoming just like it was in the Soviet Union. If you mentioned that Marx or Lenin were Jewish, that was a capable offense. They shot you in the head.
Yes, we are not quite there yet, but we're very, very close and coming there. That you can't really say a word against the government without being accused of being a terrorist or some kind of enemy. You make yourself an enemy, and that's how they treat you. Homeland Security, all of the intelligence organizations are all set up just like in, as you point out, in communist Russia, to do away with people who know the truth about things and want to oppose what is going on with a whole new world order regime being installed. And Obama is nothing but a figurehead dictator.
Now I have to say, I've been studying this for maybe not quite as long as you have, Harold, but I'd say Obama is perfect. He's perfect. I mean, he's the perfect New World Order leader, isn't he? He's black, he's white, he's Muslim, he's Jew, he's Christian, he's everything. Oh, he's even an illegal. He's even an illegal alien. They wonder why he's giving the illegals access here, because he's one. He just pardoned himself, didn't
he? He seems to have, yes. And we can't, you can't raise any questions about him, but there's so many questions about both him and Michelle and what their background really is, and understand that you cannot read her thesis paper at Yale, you cannot see anything that's hidden, and absolutely no one has come forward ever, to my knowledge, and said, oh, I knew Barack Obama, I went to law school with him, I sat in contracts class with him. No one has come forward and said anything like that.
Well, now, Larry Sinclair knows him.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was leaving out. Yes, some said yes. The ones that he didn't want to hear about. But yeah, nobody has come forward and said that. Oh, I knew Barack Obama, went to school with him, and all of that. No one has come forward and said that. It's a writer's